what is racism? It's more than just perspective. It's what? Okay, so that's a part of it. But what do we, so when you say someone is being racist, what does that mean to you? But is it more than just bias? Okay, so discrimination is a behavior. Okay, discrimination is a behavior. So when you're discriminating against somebody, you don't necessarily have to discriminate someone when you are a racist. Okay? You don't have to be, you don't have to discriminate. What are some of the other isms that are up there? Yeah. What else? Well, is feminism the same thing as sexism? Well, it's a difficult question. Actually, about that. So let's talk about what sexism first. And there's ageism as well, because ageism is going to sneak into its ugly head here coming up shortly. Is that, are you judged based on how old you are? Yes. Okay. If you look too young, people don't take you seriously. If you look too old, people get concerned when you fall down. At the gym, I was trying to. I want to be able to do a squat while standing on one of the little medicine balls. You just stand on the medicine ball and you go to the full squat, and you stand back up, standing on the medicine ball. And I can do it if I'm standing in the rack, but not touching it. But why standing in the rack? So I can catch myself if I start tipping over, or holding onto the rings or something like that in the gym. But so the hard one is when you put it in the middle of the floor at the gym, and then try to get on it. It's about as big as a basketball. But it's a little heavier and doesn't squish like a basketball does. My son doesn't like me standing on his basketball, so whatever. Anyway, but so if my son tries it and falls, does anybody go, ooh? No, they laugh. But if I go flying off of it and crash, they go, ooh. Why? Hey, what? But so? I am likely to fall and break something. Kid is likely to fall and not break something. So what you're doing is making a prediction. You're making a prediction based on whatever characteristic, especially ageism. You're going to assume that if an old person falls, they're going to hurt themselves. It turns out young people hurt themselves way more than old people. But why do we seem to worry about the old people more? It takes a long time to heal when you're old. I dislocated my shoulder, and it was like 6 months before my shoulder was back to normal. And so, when I tore the meniscus in my knee in August, I wasn't back to doing squats until November. When Dallas, she tore her knee apart. If she just does the physical therapy and maybe gets it surgerized, she could be back being 100% functional by summer because she's younger. And so the consequences of being old and hurting yourself are greater. How do you know that? I don't think any of you studied gerontology, bone reproduction science. How do you know? Yeah, but you can't trial and error ageism. Well, who do you see? Who do you pay attention to? Your parents. And if one of your parents has crashed and hurt themselves, you see them suffering. So therefore, what do you say to all old people? Don't hurt yourself. As my son always says, Dad, this is not going to end well. Woohoo! Let it fly. When we're skiing, he wants to go down all those stupid double black diamonds. Ah, hate that. When I ski down them, it's very awkward and terrible looking. It's not good at all. And I'll ski down him just so I'm worried about him getting stuck somewhere with his ski stuck up his butt and he can't move. And I'm like, someone has to be there to help him. And so I'm going to awkwardly flop my way down these stupid steep trails. And I do it so I ski down them so I'm not going to get hurt. I'm not skiing down them to go, let's have fun and go shred some gnar, dude. I don't shred the gnar. But at the same time is that am I going to get hurt? No, I've been skiing my whole life. The only time I've hurt myself skiing is when I was doing something stupid that really wasn't have a point. I was trying to do a turn, and the hill was really steep, turn all the way around and then come back down. So like you turn really hard, and then you go up the hill, and then you jump, and then turn and come back down the hill. Kind of like an ollie off the lip, if you will. And did it work? No. Should I be doing that? No. And I just actually hurt this knee. I twisted the joint, tib-fib joint right there. Just popped it. I skied the rest of the week, no problem, because it's not really a load-bearing thing, but boy, don't do this when you have that joint problem. Just saying. It's a good soccer injury. You kick the turf. It's a good one. Okay, anyway. So, just realizing I did that once. I bet that's why I popped that joint. Because we're playing soccer and I hit the ground kicking and it pulled the big muscle right here. Huh, I wonder if that's why. Anyway, so, but when you have prejudice, you're making a prediction about how something is going to go. And when you make a prediction, that is cognitive, forward thinking. Okay, so let's roll back over here to cognitive psychology. Cognitive psychology is memory, thoughts, plans, and the future. Okay? We talked a lot about this a lot. Yeah. That's a little brain. Yeah, see, there's the brain, there's the cerebellum, and here's the brainstem. Here's the occipital lobe. Most humans, we take our information in through the occipital lobe. Most of the things that we process and we're visual. Most humans are very, very visual. What happens to your attention when you don't have your glasses on? It's much easier to be distracted. There's more noise when you don't have your glasses on. Okay, with the more noise, it's hard to fill in semantic details. Okay, so we form concepts, stories, based on the data that we perceive. Our mind looks at a perspective. We say, oh, data is cause and effect. What is this? How does it relate to this? What is this? How does it relate to this? That's what we do. That's behaviorism. Stimulus, behavior. Stimulus, behavior. So then, we form a concept. That kind of stimulus equals this kind of response. Not specific anymore, but what's it called when you have a general response? So it's generalized. Okay, so humor. So, like for example, what color is the backdrop of my computer? What color is the whiteboard? What color am I pointing to right here? Black or white? Come on. It's gray. Yeah. Oh, the leaves are brown. Okay. So when you start thinking about, you can see this as black, you can see this as white. What color is the pen that I'm writing on? What color? Wait, but why is it whiter where the pen is than where the white is? It's the difference between a light and a pigment, just in case if you want to go physics on it. A light reflects off, a pigment absorbs. So I am shining a darker colored light on a white surface, so I am seeing less white here. I'm seeing more white here because a brighter white is being shown on the white surface. Okay, so you can, once you understand the parameters of physics, can you explain what color this is? Yeah, once you understand the parameters of physics, you can understand that most of this room is this beigey white color. That wall is significantly whiter than this wall. Because it's physics, you can figure it out. However, in order for you to understand it, what do you need? Semantic details. You have to understand exactly what the difference is. If I turn the lights off, does it change the relative colors in the door? Relative colors in the door. No. You still see it the same way whether the lights are on or off. Because our brain doesn't see the semantic details. It gets the concept. Even what you perceive is a concept, not actually what the data is around us. Okay. So what we do is we take our concepts and they form stories. Something happens, we try to find meaning and cause and effect to it. If we can find meaning, cause, and effect to it, we remember it. What if we can't find meaning, cause, and effect to it? It doesn't exist. It goes into your sensory memory. If it doesn't have meaning, cause, and effect, our short-term memory goes, no, and moves on. Like if you hear that whistly sound, okay? If that whistly sound, it's a ghost. Why would you go there? Because ghosts make that whistly sound. And weird things happen when you hear that whistly sound, like curtains move. Lamps sway. Right? It left. What is that whistly sound? Wind. Does wind also cause curtains to move? Yeah. Does it cause lamps to sway? Yeah. Does it cause candles to blow out? Yeah. Can you feel the wind coming through the door? You can hear it, but you can't feel it. Can you see the wind? No. That was a big discussion we had with my son. Can you see the air? Well, when there's a lot of smog in it, but what do you see? The smog. Can you see the air currents? Yes, you put smoke in the air, you can see air currents, but can you see the air? No. Because how do you know it's there then? I'm not dead. So we look at the cause and effect relationships and draw conclusions based on this cause and effect relations. What if we are dead? What if this is all a facsimile living inside of a machine? Okay, sorry. So the idea of this cause and effect, we come up with a story. The story has a plausible meaning or purpose, and it makes sense, and you believe it and don't question it. Our poor children believed an old white man with a beard came down the chimney once a year. Crazy Christmas traditions. Do you do Christmas with your kids? Nice work. So you put the cookies by the window. Yeah. Well, if you watch any Santa Claus movie, there's a magical fireplace that appears when they don't have a fireplace, but that's irrelevant. But so it was so much fun is that I remember when my brother, I'm sorry if I'm ruining this for you, but my brother killed Christmas for me. I remember I was 6 or 7, and my parents had just gone through a divorce. My brother was very angry, and he's like, I know where Mom keeps the presents. She's Santa Claus. Just get over it. Quit bugging me. I'm like, so I went upstairs and looked, and sure enough, there was the stuff, and I went down the next morning, like Christmas morning, I'm like, oh, bastard. Okay? And he killed it. So, but of course, we didn't kill it for our friends, because after we killed it and we were all upset Christmas morning, thanks, bro, that it didn't really matter. I got what I wanted, so I really enjoyed playing with it, but that's irrelevant. The snow speeder from Empire Strikes Back. So cool. I must have been older than that, though, because the snow speeder, that was a soccer ball year. Snow speeder was a couple years later. Moving on. So, but like when our little babies were small, Santa Claus didn't show up. But as soon as my daughter was 2, first year she was still too young to realize what's going on. As soon as she was 2, what happened? Yeah, it's magic. So when you tell them magic is a real substantial thing for 2-year-olds. And some people say, well, magic, you shouldn't get to your kids. You're going to delude your kid. They're going to have hating you in the future. It turns out that their brains, up until about age 5 or 6, magic works. You can say magic, and that is a legitimate cause and effect relationship between A and B, and the story works, and the answer is magic. And it works because to a little kid, do they understand how the world works? No, so magic fills in a lot of gaps in their consciousness that gives them calm and peace, because why do we like calm and peace? When you make a prediction and it comes true, it's pleasurable. Remember we talked about this conspiracy theories? When people find the crazy conspiracy theory and all of a sudden it's true, you have this kind of sick, yes, I knew it. Okay, my poor daughter woke up this morning and she's got a little bit swollen lymph nodes in her neck. And my wife, of course, is the panic, worst case scenario person, so obviously my daughter has leukemia. But she had mono last semester, so why do you think she has swollen lymph nodes? It's not coming back. It's just she's probably got a cold and her body's hypersensitive to infections right now. And so, but why does my wife go right to the worst case scenario predictions? It turns out so she can over rev and stress herself out now. It actually doesn't help you prepare for stress if you hyper panic now. But that's just her personality. Her dad is the same way. And I'm the rock in the family that goes, okay, we'll make a doctor's appointment as soon as if they're any more swollen after school, and then we'll make an appointment. Gave my daughter 2 Tylenol this morning and said, drink your entire water bottle. Best way to get rid of swollen lymph nodes, Tylenol and lots of water. What'll it do? Reduce the swelling and flush it out, and she'll be fine hopefully this afternoon. If not, we'll go to the doctor. But it's one of those things that if you panic, what can that cause? Somebody said this last class. What happens when you see something happening? You see a story happening, and so you cause the outcome. Self-fulfilling prophecy. We use the word placebo effect. The self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're getting a headache and you take a Tylenol and your headache goes away, did the medicine make it go away? Yes, because your idea of taking the medicine helped the headache go away. The thought of taking the medicine does what? Makes the headache go away. Yeah. So if you're looking at a sequence of numbers, when you put n at the end, it means that to the n, to the number of sequences in the story. So the n would be how many the story are stories ever start and stop in reality? No, they're continuums. They just run forever. But what's interesting about when we talk about a story is a sequence of events. So there's an n or infinite number of events within your sequence. So one of the things that I love about Phineas and Ferb cartoon show is that they always have these backstories. Ah, little choo-choo. What if you see Dr. Doofenshmirtz being evil, trying to take over the world? You assume that he's evil. You don't see what's happened in the past to poor Dr. Doofenshmirtz and him losing his little choo-choo. Poor fellow. Even the guys at Love Muffin don't like him. Anyway, whatever it is. What is the name of the evil society? Is it evil? Yeah. Okay. The evil scientists union that he's belonged to. Yeah. Anyway, because they're unionized, Local 142. Okay. Brilliant show. So, but a backstory is really important. A backstory tells you where did this person come from to get to where they're going. When you're using prejudice, however, what is that when you prejudge somebody? You create a backstory. You create the semantic details to fill in the gaps that you have in your sensation and perception. John Peace did this, the gentleman that was test driving our Lexus. Oh, that Asian woman had trouble here. Did he know where in the world she came from? No, but why say Asia? It's a good guess, by the way. Well, 50% of the population of the world is Asian. So if you're going to guess Asian. 50-50 chance. Okay? Now, what details did he use to label her as half the population of the world? Her features. Well, people from Asian countries have typical features. As you go further south, their skin gets darker. As you go further north, their skin gets lighter. Wait a minute, that sounds familiar. Moving on. But they have more what's called Mongoloid eye features. The further north they get, the more they look like Soviet folks or Inuit Indians. Or the further south they get, they look more like people from India. Weird. Okay? But at the same time is that when you create semantic details, what's going to happen? I'm going to write the word bias up here because somebody said that earlier. You're going to be wrong. Why are you going to be wrong? So when you're prejudiced, when you're prejudging someone, you're not going to be wrong every time. Somebody who has very good intuition, what's intuition? Prejudging. But you have good tennis intuition, I assume. Which means that you are prejudging where that person's going to hit the ball. If you've played against the same opponent multiple times, what happens with your intuition in judging where they're going to hit the ball? It gets better. My student Kenny, who plays World Professional Poker, he has different probability charts based on which player he's playing with. Certain players like to bluff on certain hands, certain players like to bet on certain hands. And so if you can actually Google these if you want, but they're probability charts for playing Texas Hold'em. And you can see what's the likelihood of winning if you bet this when you have this. And it's a whole matrix of a chart. But each person has their own matrix. Each person has their own probability chart. Do you memorize probability charts like Rain Man? No. Blackjack is a much easier probability chart to play, by the way. But how do you know what probability chart to play? If you've played with the same people multiple times, it's easier to play against that person because you can guess what they're going to do with more accuracy. Kenny said that when the World Poker Tour went on TV and Texas Hold'em started becoming significantly more popular, it completely changed the game. He said because, quote, there's too many morons that are playing that are making stupid bets and it's hard to figure out what they're going to do. Because a moron would they have a really good hand and like double down everything. And most people will just fold. But sometimes they'll double down on everything when they got nothing. And it's like 50-50 whether they double down or not. And you're like, how am I supposed to predict what this person's going to do? And that person might lose their shirt or might make a fortune, but in the long run, what's their net in the long run? Nothing. They generally wash to nothing at the end. Kenny one year was up about 7 or 8 million by the end of the year. He gets sponsors to pay his money for the tournaments, and they pay him his money up front, and he gets paid to go play at the tournament. He doesn't keep the winning. So he plays with their money and the sponsors that he has. And he said it's great. He'd get to travel all over the world playing poker. He'd fly into Spain and play tournament in Spain for 3 days, and then fly down to South Africa and play in a tournament for a couple days, and then fly up to Vegas and play a tournament for a couple days, and then come home. And he took my class one semester because he needed a break from playing poker. So I made him explain the probability curves to my behavioral psych course. He said it's easy. You know, it's this giant matrix. And he goes, you just kind of feel how the person's going to bet. Well, first I had to learn the names of the colors you gave them. Because is it just a sensation and perception? Yeah, that's why a lot of the guys wear the dark sunglasses when they play. Because if you watch their eyes, can you see their emotions in their eyes? Yeah, unless the really good ones that are like, that look like they're constipated the whole time, is because they're trying not to show the emotion in their eyes. Not show excitement, not show fear, not show anxiety. So now, if you're trying to prejudge someone, what is discrimination then? Yeah. I said that right at the beginning. Discrimination is behavioral. And so when you start producing the behaviors of prejudice, then you start to discriminate. Most people are prejudiced. The reason most people are prejudiced is because that's what our prefrontal cortex does. Our prefrontal cortex looks for the future. We make predictions so that we can be more successful now. Bless you. Okay? So the truth in everything is that our brain remembers time, procedures, and emotions. That's what remembering. Remember how you feel, remember what time it was, what else do you remember? Who you're with, and that's how you feel. Place. Specific location. And what's interesting is that that's what your brain automatically remembers. But what you do is those things you automatically remember get stuck to semantic details. Those semantic details get stuck to the who's, when's, and where's. So if we shift back to attitude, what kind of things do you typically have attitudes for? Negative emotions. Well, positive attitudes are very good, but they're not as easily to foster as negative attitudes. It's much easier to teach someone to be a failure than it is to teach someone to be a success. Middle school. Why is it easy to teach someone to be a failure? Well, if you punish somebody for doing something, what's the best way to avoid punishment? Not doing it. So middle school kids are wonderful, and the reason why they're the more harassing people in the world is because they keep trying new behaviors. The world is their oyster, tons of new behaviors. Because they have all these new behaviors to try, they don't know what to do and what not to do. If a kid is constantly punished, what are they going to do? They keep changing their behavior to try to figure out what to do. Some kids, depending on the personality, who you are, some kids withdraw and just do exactly what they're supposed to do, and that's it. Are they happy? No. Yeah. They hide it. Why do they hide it? To avoid the punishment. Avoiding punishment is very reinforcing. And so you'll see the kids that are trying to drink at school. Yeah, I'm going to drink at school. It's awesome. Good idea? No, because you're setting yourself up for a long, bumpy road later. Yeah, I'm awesome. The kid smoking the Juul in class. He's a really nice kid. I'm like, dude, not high school. It's not cool. Okay? And the kid, my daughter has her friends, well, not her friends, but people at her biology table. She goes, I'm not hanging out with them. Why? They get in trouble. My daughter's pretty straight. But they're bending over to tie their shoe, have their Juul in their sock, put it down. Very nice. Oh, it's a flash drive. Quit sucking on it. Yuck. Okay. Anyway, but the thing about it is that why would you do that one specific behavior right then, right there? It's risky, it's fun, you can get away with it, you get a little rush from the smoke. Yeah. Okay? but then, but they do people, especially punk high school kids. No offense, punk high school kids. But do they see the long-term effect of that? Why not? The reward, you can't. The reward right now of being the cool guy that's got the vodka in his locker is much cooler than the than the old guy with the vodka in his desk at his job that he hates. Same thing, by the way. Can you see a difference in the metaphor, though? Yeah. Yeah, one's cool, one's sad. The only difference is ageism. Woohoo! Okay, so that's exactly where we're going, is because are you prejudicing yourself? Yes, and that's the same reason that one of my buddies brought in Vermont, it's a strange place. In deer season, people would bring their guns to school. You don't want to leave your gun in the car. It's a bad form to leave your gun in the car. So you bring it in, you give it to the office, and then they have a rack where you have your rifles. And if Dallas were here, she would verify this because they do this in Alaska too. And then at the end of school, you come and get your hunting rifle and you put on your camos and you go out and try to shoot cute little fuzzy deer. My buddy Mike had a bumper sticker: if it flies, it dies. If it crawls, it falls. Right next. But that's high school. So one of the kids, are you allowed to just put it in your locker though? No, it's bad form. There's boundaries. Well, he had his hunting knife. When you go deer hunting, if you shoot a big deer, you don't want to carry an undressed deer out of the woods because it weighs a lot. And so you carry a buck knife. It's a hunting knife, and it's meant to gut the animal. It's a knife that's got a big serrated edge on one side. Did I just reset the whole thing? I think I did. So it's got a big serrated edge on one side, and then a curve and a big blade on the other side. Okay, it's a gutting knife, and you use it to clean the animal. So the issue with it is, can you have that at school? He thought it'd be cool just to wear it to school all day. Acceptance. What happens if you're carrying a blade more than 3 inches long in a public school? Automatic suspension. He's a good kid, fine kid, but he thought it would be cool. So, good kid, fine kid, but. So, what is that? I'd be cool. Yeah, because it seems like a really good idea right then, right there. So, okay, so when we look at the influence of a group, and it's talking about your peers, your peer pressure, why do you hang out with a certain group of people? Okay, so then there's when you're young, how old were you? I was 15, 16. Okay, so when you're young, you have a self here, and this is your real self. And your real self at age 15 and 16 is a very strange thing, because you change constantly. And as you grow older, the real self will change. Then you have this mythical thing, this future self. And this future self in behavioral or humanistic psychology is called your ideal self. Okay, so this ideal self, how do you set this ideal self? You learn. You learn what the ideal self is. And so your real self, who you are right now, is, for a lot of high school kids, is dependent on the not self. And a lot of kids will shift crowds depending on who they like. Why do you shift crowds? Well, here is most people. Remember the stupid normal distribution. When you're in the center, when you're surrounded by people with similar attitudes, how does it feel? Nice. It's easy to be around people with similar attitudes. If you don't know who you are, what do? You find a group and sit in this group. How does it feel? And if it feels comfortable, you go, oh, I'm comfortable here. And what a lot of groups will do is the groups will look at the people outside of the groups and say, ew, to this poor group over here. Why do they say, ew, to that group over there? You're not cool, man. I was the goody two-shoes sticking in my group. Thank you, phone. The goody two-shoes sticking with my group. I didn't do any drugs or anything like that in high school. And so I was in band, and that teachers liked me. And so all the really cool kids, nerd. I was hip to the rednecks because I liked to go fishing, and I used to see a lot of them out on the lake. So the rednecks like me. But if the rednecks like you, do the cool people like you? No, because back in my day, the cool people were the yuppies. So they, not yuppies, what were they back then? Preppies. Alligators, topsiders. Those are the cool kids. They came from the rich part of our neighborhood. We had 5 schools, 5 towns went to my school. Yeah. Izod. It's alligator shirts. They were very popular, very pastel colors. You had the Adidas Stan Smiths, which are back. I saw those at the store a couple weeks ago. This white Adidas leather shoes with the 3 holes of dots on the side. The Rod Laver sneakers, those were all like the really rich kid stuff. As a poor kid, could we afford the rich kid stuff? No, so the rich kids look at you and go, ew, out group. So you got the in group and the out group. What causes the pressure, and this is where we started talking about this right before class, what causes the pressure is the distance between the in group and the out group. In reality, how are the kids very different? No. In fact, if you were to remove all of the badges and accoutrements that the people wear to school and just put each person on a personality profile, would people fit very similarly along these lines? But if you have money, or if you have a higher socioeconomic status, what does that do? It shifts you into a group of similar people. Whether you're actually like those people or not, this is the thing, if you're actually like those people or not, it's irrelevant because you tend to fit in that group better. It's easier to fit in that group. And so once you fit in a group, there's something that's called a risky shift up here. Oh, we'll use this one. The group starts to make opinions. I'm really impressed by a lot of my daughter's little friends, that some of her friends have gone into the let's drink on the weekends and party. You know, they're 15-year-olds. And some of the kids that are getting into that have parents that seem to think it's okay. And now, in the grand scheme of things, are bad things going to happen to these people forever? No. It's just choices now. But at the same time, the kids are hanging out with other kids who enjoy doing this stuff. So what's going to happen? Oh, so it doesn't matter. I went to San Diego State. Partying community is what we were. Woohoo, SDSU. Fight on, yes, stick men. Sons of Mons will win again. Hold your spirits high, never bow one knee. We won't stop till victory. Say on, yes, stick men. Hold your banners high. Red and black belt to our team. It's San Diego West fight. Okay, so what happens is that the group starts coming up with an opinion. Hey, drinking's cool. Yeah, drinking's cool. And so everybody in the group thinks drinking's cool. So then they say, well, drinking a lot is cool. And the group goes, yay, drinking a lot is cool. Hey, let's see if you can finish this bottle of wine by yourself. Cool. What happened? I put this on our Clash of Clans thing. I was like, this one guy wasn't promoted or something in our Clash Royale video game that I play. And so he started complaining that he's not being promoted, but some other guy named Slippery Sneaker 7 or something was, and this guy, I forget what his name was, I could scroll back and find out, but the names are relatively stupid, but so-and-so was complaining, like Burgermeister, was complaining that he wasn't being promoted, and the guy that runs it, the Sir Nut of Nuttingham, who runs our clan, because it makes perfect sense, he goes, I do it all on Saturdays, I have a job, I'm not going to sit and mess with all this during the week. And the kid goes, you're a bunch of N-words. I assumed it was a kid by the reaction. And I go, wow, I said, that escalated quickly. And that's like that's my favorite little meme, like, ooh, that escalated quickly. It's a good meme because that's what happens with groups. One person in the group can suggest, dude, I bet you can't slam that bottle. And then all of a sudden, like 4 people are like, yeah. And it's not that you lose self, because your real self, especially when you're young, is not very well defined. It's kind of a fuzzy little thing. You have this future ideal self, but it's really hard to see a future ideal self when you're 15. When, like, my poor daughter is struggling to get ready for finals. But, every time I walk into a room, she's on Snapchat. Like, shouldn't you spend a little less time on Snapchat and a little more time? I'm talking to my friends when we're studying. No, you're not. You're talking to your friend about stupid things, taking a picture of half your face. But the idea that she doesn't understand what studying means yet. And I sat and went through all of her biology with her to make sure she knew it. She's doing okay with biology, but she goes, oh, I know it. Yeah, but when you get to the test, what's going to happen? You're going to get nervous and you're going to freak, so you have to overlearn it. You might know it now, but you have to overlearn it in order to understand it. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. My wife's a principal. I've been in school since 1975. I haven't missed a semester of school. I think I've done this once or twice. But how come she won't relate to my predictions of her behavior? I am outside of her normal. Ew. Old people, help, there's an adult trying to relate to me. You're a Shrek fan. Okay, so it's fun to look at this from an outside perspective, from a psych theoretical perspective, because what you have is this thing called risky shift. Is that when a group becomes defined, the group is able to move further than the individual would be able to move. I'll give an example of this. This is from last winter? I think it's last winter. I had a student that went to a party, and she'd never used marijuana before, and someone had offered her a gummy bear thing. And she's like, you know what? It's a gummy bear. How bad could this really be? Yeah. Be careful with edibles, ladies and gentlemen. Until they're really regulated, you never know exactly what's going to be in it. All the different strains can do all sorts of different things. Anyway, so she ate a gummy bear, and for about 45 minutes, she was perfectly fine. She was drinking and having a great time. Then all of a sudden, the gummy bear started affecting her. And she started getting super wigged out, super paranoid, super nervous. So one of her friends goes, hey, you're getting a little edgy here. Take this. And he gave her an Ativan. And then so she got super, super groggy. Ativan is a tranquilizer. And so what it does is it takes whatever alcohol effect it has and magnifies whatever the effects alcohol has. She is college, like freshman in college age. It's one of you, basically picture, not you guys. No. Anyway, so all of a sudden she went from a person who was just having fun drinking at a party, and now she's using somebody else's prescription medication. And that escalated quickly. And then she got, if you use alcohol and Ativan simultaneously, it can either cause blackouts, bad date rapey drug, or good date rapey drug, depending on the side you're on. Awful. Be careful, people. So then she starts falling asleep sitting on the couch. So her friend says, "Hey, take this, and you'll be able to hang for the rest of the night." And gave her some Dexedrine. Not like slamming the meth, but she's drifting down, and that's it. She goes, and the next day she's like feeling like complete crap. I'm like, why do I feel so bad? All I did was eat a freaking gummy bear. What happened to the rest of the night? She didn't black out, but she was definitely gray. Just not exactly clear. And what's crazy about this is she would never have done that, but the crowd that she was hanging with, did it make her able to be like that? It influenced. It's not very rarely will your peer group tell you need to do this or. They don't. Very rarely that doesn't really happen. My daughter was at a party and somebody snuck one of their parents' beers out of the fridge and was drinking it, and they offered to my daughter. My daughter was like, "No way, we're not going that way." And the person said, oh, come on, do it, do it. No. The person said, okay, and walked away. That's the way, but how does it feel as that kid? It feels like everybody around you saying, do it, do it, do it. And occasionally you get the rowdy crowd saying, do it, do it, do it. But that's not the norm. What the norm is that it's called, is it normative or informative influence? Informative, they'll say, hey, do this and you will feel this way. Versus 3 people start using it. Or the person that you like and you trust comes up to you and says, oh, you're getting really tired. Here, take this, and you'll wake up and have some more fun later on. We can keep going. And so the person that you trust and they say it's okay, it's called normative influence. What are you trying to do? Be in the middle. Because if you start drifting over here, being one of these people, I really don't think I should do that. The group, if you do it, you get back to the normal in the in-group. And being stuck in the in-group actually is a very satisfying place to be. Because you know what's going to happen when you're in the in-group. Yes, it's very easy to predict what's going to happen. Oh, wait. Kenny, I'm teaching right now. Kenny?
Hello?
I'm teaching.
Oh, okay. Okay, give me a phone in just a second.
Say hi, class.
Hi. Hey, class, I know you didn't help with my project, but you were in there and you were. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm helping with his thesis dissertation today. So I gave it to my stats course at the end of semester last semester, and they analyzed it for me. PE major. Oh, you have to run? Okay. Kiddo? You're just winging it this semester. Okay, let me give you a really quick hint.
Okay.
All the expensive products are relatively useless. How African American is her hair?
She's black, white, Mexican, so it's curly like mine.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. Oh boy. We went through that bus at our house. It's not good. But we have straight hair. You have curly hair. It's a lot of combing. Little boy, no problem. Little girl, stigma. Okay. What was that TV show, Wisteria Lane? Little boy got gum in his hair, and then so they badly shaved his head. It looked like he had cancer, and then so she kept playing the fact that, oh, he has cancer to everybody, and they found out he didn't. It's Wisteria Lane. I don't remember the name of it. Yeah.
I was also a good thing, and I shaved my head like 2 months ago, so I went totally bald, and everyone asked me if I had cancer.
Yeah, my buddy Nick is he's just bald, and he shaves his head because he's really bald. And so one of his friends, he passed out while drinking once. Don't have 40-year-old friends like this. They shaved one eyebrow, right? And so just to be an ass. Anyway, so he shaved the other one, and he went to what's the disorder where you lose your hair? Alopecia. So one of his friends actually has alopecia, and so he was talking with his friend, and this other person came up and said, "Oh, it's so great! You guys are so strong." And Nick's like, "No, I did that." And they still haven't grown in very well because he had blonde hair, and it's just don't shave anybody's eyebrow. I had my shaved head. I actually liked it for swimming. It was really cool. Eyebrows though. Yeah, and it feels so good when you dive under the water. Sorry. Okay, so does it mean that you lose yourself in a group? Yes. Okay, so the larger the group, the larger the normative influence. Okay, but what's interesting is that you also have what's called informative influence. I can talk to teens about the dangers of binge drinking. Okay? And I can talk to teens about the risks. But do most teens die from binge drinking? No, most of them are fine. So what do they say? I'm fine. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And because if you look at the normative influence, they look at their peer groups telling them all these things, but they don't see the informative influence and the risks and the dangers. And as an old person, why do I see the risks and the dangers? I can see a different perspective. I mean, when I was teaching at Ramona High School, we had 2 kids die from binge drinking. The old adage of the people dying in their own vomit, they're not dying in their own vomit, they stop breathing. And so they choke not on their vomit, but they're actually stopping breathing because it suppresses the medulla. Someone who's small and drinks an entire bottle of wine, is that enough to suppress their breathing? Yes. I mean, it doesn't really stop the breathing, but they do what's called shallow respiration. And you don't get enough air, and your blood oxygen concentration drops. And if you have high alcohol, low blood oxygen concentration, it can cause brain damage. But is it likely? No, but it's probable. And as you get older, you start to see more and more people like this. One of my students named Crystal Belinsky was with some guy that was drinking and driving. She wasn't drinking, but he was, and he refused to let her drive. So she got in the car with him anyway, and they got killed in Ramona on the freeway. And then one of my other students, Catherine, got killed by a drunk person in his dune buggy, launching over a berm in the desert without a spotter. So if you're any rednecks, okay, when you launch off a berm, you have to have a spotter, because what if there's a quad sitting on the other side? You land on it, and she got basically her head and shoulders hit by the front of the buggy when it went off the berm. And the thing about it is that you say, oh, it can't happen, it won't happen. But as you get older, what do you start to see? You start seeing it happen, and you start seeing patterns of things happening that you really can't see when you're young. Every year, Granite Hills, every year, kid gets killed. Burton this year. Okay, and it's really sad, because why did he die? Sitting in the back of a Jeep without a seatbelt. I mean, if you're in a Jeep with a seatbelt, you might flip over, but that's what kind of Jeeps are made to do. So he would have been fine. But Jeep waggled, got ejected, killed. It's really sad. So this is a really difficult thing, because is the group influence on you greater than your influence on yourself? Yes. So this is why mindfulness and training works really well. The problem is, when I used to teach this in the high school, when I taught this to freshmen and sophomores and juniors at Ramona High School, this bounced off their head, and they looked back at their real self. They could not think of their future ideal self. How do you set your future ideal self? How so? Danger. Don't act out what you're learning in this class, because then you start treating therapy without a license, and it's dangerous. Well, no, I'm kidding. But what if you're following a group? When you're little, who sets yourself? Your parents and your siblings. They tell you who you are. When you're adolescent, all the way through the beginning of high school, your peer group sets who you are. What really bothers me is a lot of counselors are telling high school kids to choose a career. Okay? If they're telling you to choose a career, a lot of you don't know what you want to do, and you're sophomores in college at this point-ish. So why would you tell a freshman in high school to choose a career? I don't think the counselors in the high school are focusing on the future self. The counselors in the high school are focusing on which classes to get you to graduate. See the difference? They want you to get through. My daughter is in early education. She discovered early on, when she was in middle school, she really liked working with these special needs populations. She worked with a group at Pershing, and she works with a Circle of Friends now. And her drive to work with these special populations comes from the fact that she has dyslexia and she's a part of this special population. The difference is she's not mentally disabled because of her disability. However, she does have a mental disability. And so she sees that she can use her understanding of different minds to be a future self. So she's got a future self already set up. She knows what she wants to do. She has a path. She has a goal. Did we tell her to do this, or did she find it herself? She found it herself. Our job as parents is to foster an environment so she has the opportunity to do whatever she needs to do. But poor Asia, does she have a lot going on in her life? Yes, and now she's got more critters going on in her life. Ugh. Okay? Because what happens when you have a little person to drag around and take care of? Your future self is a lot more difficult to pursue when you have more responsibilities. Because the responsibilities suck down self. They limit yourself. They push yourself. And you have to just keep standing back up and keep pushing forward to that future self while managing the self that's going on now. That's really hard. So does having a good group help you? Yes. So the groups can lead you to evil, but can also groups lead you to goodness. That's why we have our psychology club on campus. Psychology club, again, is a group of psych majors that we get together and try to do something. This semester I'm working on it was going to be driving, but the driving doesn't work on this computer. So Fortnite will work on this computer. And Fortnite will work on my office computer too, I discovered. So we have 2 computers that will run Fortnite effectively. Which means I have a group of people doing something that's completely stupid, but what do we all have in common? Psych majors. And one art major who really likes science. She's just cool. Tish. But what's the point of it is that if you have a group of people that you know and you recognize on campus, what happens? But if you're really busy and you have lots of things outside of school pulling you outside of school, what forms your group? Well, you're on campus all freaking day. The more you're on campus all freaking day, the more you act like a college student. Just think about this. The more you are involved in doing stuff on campus all day, you're practicing being a college student more. When I was an athlete, I used to get up every morning early, and I always still do. I'd go eat as much as I possibly could before my 8 o'clock class. They have my meal card. You just hand it to them, and they hand you food. It's the best thing ever. And then I'd go to class, and I'd finish class at noon. And then from 12:30 to 1, I'd get to the track, and I was there till 5 o'clock, 5:30 every day. Where was I spending most of my time? On the track and in the weight room. All day, every day. On weekends, I'd spend more time on the track or more time in the weight room and not too much time studying. So what was my normative influence my first couple years of college? Track. Everything I did was rolling around track and field. But once I started getting into my hard classes, I took a redshirt year. And I took all of my hard classes, and I didn't work out quite as much. I still went out to the track, but I didn't go to track meets, and I didn't work out quite as long on the track. So because I took that redshirt year, what did my primary emphasis become? School, studying, because I was taking classes that were really hard, the advanced research method, the advanced statistics, and advanced physio courses. And those were, because it was so challenging, I spent all my time doing that. I realized I can be really good at being a student if all I'm doing is being a student. And so what you start to realize is that your groups change. And your groups change you with this simple normative influence. If all you hang out with is other college students, what happens with your college student behavior? Gets better. If you hang out with a bunch of non-college students, if you go to San Diego State and you hang out with a party crowd, guess what you get good at? Partying. What happens to your grades? They don't do well. Now, it seems, some people say, oh, well, I go party all the time and I do great. If you actually follow them around, not stalking, it's for science, do they actually study more than they say? Yes. I had one student, punk high school kid. I'll stop referring to that at some point, but I won't for a while. But he was at the middle college, Grossmont Middle College. Is that what you're in? Yeah. So he was Friedrich, was his name, with long hair, rode his bike around everywhere. This was 2 summers ago in my class, so he's probably done by now. But he's like, oh, I don't study at all. He would sit in the back, not write notes, and he got perfect score on the final. And on the midterm, he got a perfect score. And everybody's like, what did you do? How did you study? He goes, I don't study at all. And they're like, really? So when you go home, what do you do? He goes, well, I go home and write down everything I can remember from class, and then I go back and look at the book to fill in any gaps that I don't have from class, and then I kind of organize my notes and I put them away. But I don't study. In his brain, what is studying? Work. He would just summarize and redo class, night class, summer class. He'd stay up till 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning doing this, and then go to sleep. He'd get up at 9, 10 o'clock the next morning, go to work, ride his bike to school, and then do the same thing. So for him, he said, I'm not studying at all. This class is cake. He's doing twice as much work as most of the other students were. But in his consciousness, what was he doing? Not studying at all, just reorganizing his notes before he goes to sleep at night. Not studying. That's all I did study. I reorganized my notes. Because once they're organized in my head, I got it. Okay, so the weird thing is that when you see somebody, you make a prediction about why their behavior is the way that it is. You make a prediction about it. People say to my wife, you're so lucky, you're tall and beautiful, you can wear whatever you want. My wife kind of looks at them and goes, okay, I'm lucky that I'm tall. I cannot find pants that fit. She has 36-inch legs, which is awesome until you actually try to find a pair of pants or a dress that actually fits. Because she's very tall and has a very short waist. So if she buys a dress that's long enough, the waist is way up here, or I don't think it's a problem, but she'll put on a dress and it's like here. I'm like, she's like, no. And so it took forever for her to find jeans. There's a website called Tall Culture, I can't say it properly, but that sells long jeans for tall women. And it's really hard to find when jeans are supposed to be long, when you have really long legs. Luckily, jeans are supposed to be short right now, so she's living large. But is she lucky that she's this way? Well, she also works out 6 days a week. We bought donuts for her staff meeting today. She will not eat a donut. I did. It was awesome. Okay, I'm not even supposed to, and I did. But I weighed 241 this morning, not 250, so I'm okay. I looked at the scale. I do it. Hit the button. Okay. I thought it would be worse than that. Anyway, but she's super healthy. She's super lean. But why is she the way she is? Hard work. But why do people say, oh, you're just so lucky, you could eat whatever you want? They don't see the whole story. They only see the story from a particular point of view. One of the teachers at her old school was having a really hard time managing her weight, so she bought the MetaFast program. MetaFast program is not a bad thing if you stick to it. But she's sitting there eating a giant breakfast burrito from the greasy Mexican place across the street from Alpine Elementary. I would love to eat one of those, but I am not trying to lose weight. I wouldn't eat one of those. And she's eating it. I'm like, aren't you doing the MetaFast thing? She goes, oh, I can't handle that. I'll just do this occasionally. I'm like, and then she complains that the MetaFast isn't working. Okay, so the idea is that you need to know the whole story. When people are prejudiced, they're making predictions based on a particular fact in the story, not the entire story. Are some stereotypes true? Yeah, the broken clock is right twice a day. Unless it's a digital clock, then it just doesn't work at all. So that's my answer to that question. You sound the same. Okay, so the stereotype, a stereotype has elements. Has elements of truth. Why would we say bad Asian drivers? Well, because some drivers are Asian and some drivers are bad, and every so often you find a bad Asian driver. Where did the stereotype come from? Well, a lot of people that emigrated from China to the United States never drove a car. I can pick on the Somali women driving the minivans. This is Asha, one of my students, Asha Aiden. I don't know if you know. Her mom drives an old Toyota minivan. And why does she drive an old minivan? She has a big family. So why does she have a minivan? To carry him. Her mom started driving when she was 32 years old. 32. So she lived most of her life not driving, and then at 32 had to learn how to drive in San Diego. Okay? And it's terrifying to drive in San Diego. To be old with a pile of kids in a car and driving, does she have a few dents in her car? Yes. And she goes, I made fun of, I saw Asha in our neighborhood. She lives down the street from us. And I saw her, she was one of my students 3 or 4 years ago. But I saw her driving an old dented minivan, so I pulled that stereotype in class on her. She's like, because is it true? Well, she drives an old Toyota minivan. Why Toyotas? They are very reliable, and once they're past their prime, we sold ours for $5,000 when it turned 120,000 miles, and it had plenty of life left in it. Okay, and it has elements, but is it the whole story? No. And if you just say, "Oh, I understand those people because that's the way they are," that's the stereotype, is where you're taking the elements of truth and using prejudice to make a prediction. Okay, so I want to take a break, take about a 5-minute break. And when we come back, I want you to get into small groups. I have a little activity for you to do. Okay? Well, that's the funny part about this, is that if you go back and read the Old Testament, who's always fighting? No. It's us versus the Philistines. That's it. And it was the people with the monotheistic rule versus the people with the pagan rule. And that's what the whole Old Testament was. And it's the Torah and the Quran. It's a lot of the same rhetoric. It's we're the right and they're not. And why do we prove that we're right? Because we go in and kill them all. That's how we prove we're right. And it's like, okay. When my son and I read through a lot of the Old Testament just for no good reason, but he goes, there's a lot of killing in this book. Yeah. And it's pretty harsh. But when you try to think about how a race gets together, okay, so I wanted you guys to form little groups. And do you remember the question you asked? Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to change it around a little bit. In your experience, that was a really good question. In your culture, in your experience, how do you tell the difference between groups? And I mean, actually, there's not that many people here, so we could kind of go around. I don't want to, what's the problem with going around the class with a lot of people? Not necessarily change the ideas, but it's harder to say things how you truly feel in front of a large group of people. But I want to. We could put. Let me put this up on a different a slide here. I want to consolidate the ideas that you have about how do you decide what are the different groups. Like in Iraq, how do you know the different groups? Right. Okay. So let me put some of these up here. I'm going to write it on here so that it'll stick on the board. Okay. But if you are, but everybody who wears a scarf, does that mean that they are a certain type of religion? But there's Sunni, there's a lot of different types of. I'm going to write scarf because I can't spell hijab. Sorry. But okay, so if someone's wearing a headscarf or hijab, are they labeled as one group? Okay. So from someone who wears one, do you see everybody with the headscarf as the same? Okay, so I'm going to put this up on the wall. So what's the differences between different hijabs? Well, we're going to ask who wears one, because I don't know. So one of my students, what was her name? I can't remember her name now. She did an experiment of asking people about what you perceive someone who's wearing a different scarves are, different hijabs, and I don't know the name. And it's important, but I don't know. So full face covered, some face covered. A lot of women from Iran will just wear a colorful scarf on the top of their head to say, yeah, I'm going to obey with the law, but I don't want to. But other women will wear the full scarf, and she said basically the result was this. For modesty, is that the more of your head that you showed, the less modest you were. And so you can think about this is that what would be the exact opposite of the full, only showing the eyes? A bikini. Yeah, so going all the way the other way but in Western European culture, if you go to the beach, especially in Europe, what are they wearing? Just bikini bottoms. And a lot of times they're flossing and you're like, ugh. Not everyone looks like Instagram. Ugh. Okay. Anyway, but people wear nothing pretty much at the beach. Compared to the other side of the spectrum is the full long black dress, everything covered, no shape of the person whatsoever identifiable. So are there lines that you draw is it just whether they're covered or not? I know, but I'm picking on you because I'm not picking on you, I shouldn't say that. But this is how do you tell the difference between different people? Is it just looking at the scarf? Okay, so we can also look at language. Okay, the language that someone speaks. Yeah, or is it accent? Yeah. So all of a sudden, the way that they speak, it's really funny. Like before a lot of Middle Eastern people immigrated to the United States, you met one or two people who were Middle Eastern. And that could be anywhere from southern Greece to Eritrea, your brain just Northern Africa. That's East Africa, sorry. But all around there, people in the United States say, oh, they're Middle Eastern. Could you have is Morocco the same as Egypt, is the same as Lebanon? No. But why were they all classified as the same? It's easier to generalize if you only have a very few observations. And it's easy to stereotype if you only have a few observations. I had a student named Galal. Galal was, he grew up on the border of Pakistan and India. He happened to be on the India side, but he was, wore the turban and had the beard and the twist. I forget what that's called. Sikh? I don't know. His name was Galal. But he goes, I go, do you practice the religion? He goes, oh, no. I go, why do you dress that way? He goes, because it irritates the crap out of people trying to pigeonhole me. And his parents like it. His parents practice the religion. He doesn't. But he dresses the way his parents do because he walks somewhere and people go, what's that guy? Because do you picture people from India with a beard? No, he's got this big beard. When he talks, though, he sounds like Apu, which he hates that metaphor. Who's Apu? The Simpsons. And Apu is actually from Pakistan, but that's not important. Pardesh, who works at our 7-Eleven, is Pakistani, and he was wearing a shirt with Apu on it for a 7-Eleven Simpsons thing 5 or 6 years ago. I'm like, how do you feel about that shirt? He goes, I don't want to talk about it. Because is it offensive to him? But is he Pakistani working at a 7-Eleven? Yeah. Yeah. It fits it because? Well, it's because when you look at jobs that require low training but high responsibility, you're going to get a certain character of people that are going to do those jobs. Low training, high responsibility. Running a 7-Eleven is not easy. But he's been working at ours forever, and he makes everything super easy, and it's fun. Anyway, I was talking the other day, and he's like, how long have you been working here? He goes, forever. But he does that, and he has another job after that, and that's how he supports his family. How come he doesn't go get an education and get a better job? He's working all the time, so he can't. So he's stuck. Anyway, so language, dialect. What does dialect tell you? How y'all doing? Okay, it's yeah, and it's whenever we ever redneck up, we always start talking about fishing, and whenever you're bass fishing, you gotta talk about this, about bass fishing with a flippy bugger. Okay, and what's funny, or you talk like Larry the Cable Guy. Why do you over exaggerate the accent or the dialect of English? You put on a character. You're playing a You're playing a role. Okay, so what else? What else helps you decide? So how do you? Okay, so what about so food? Okay, so what? Give me an example. I want examples of these. Bless you. So food, does a food tell, is that something you identify different cultures or different ethnicities or differences between groups? Yes. Like what? Give me an example.
For example, in Saudi Arabia, like you saw rice and most of the like all have rice, and then some other folks are like Pakistan have less meat, so more rice and less food. That was
So Saudi Arabia is constipated. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Johan is a really rice, but also the winter meal, so they have a lot of rice. They have a lot of rice.
Yeah. So if you're Japanese, you're tendally eating rice and fish. What if you're poor in Japan? What are you eating? I don't know. Noodles. Wheat noodles. Ramen. Because noodles are a lot cheaper to make than rice. And the byproducts of rice, they make noodles. Go to World Food Market. Anybody been there at 54th Street? It's epic. Okay. And look at the noodle section. There is a huge, huge section of noodles. Huge. And whenever we go there, we have to buy a jar of something we don't know what it is and try it. Got some pickled radishes. No, not kimchi, pickled radishes. They're like these pink radishes that are pickled. Wow, amazing. Sweet, sour, amazing. Okay, sorry. So if you're eating a lot of rice for your meal, does that set your social status? Versus meat? Possibly. And what about spices? So I want you to think about restaurants just in San Diego. When you go to a particular restaurant, do you see groups of people? Like? Which is, pardon me, this is what? Well, it's like we said convoy. When you go to a lot of the restaurants in Convoy, a lot of the dim sum places or a lot of the noodle shops, who's in there mostly? Asians. 60. There's so many different types of Asians. We label the 50% of the world as Asian, but you go in, there's a lot of Vietnamese people. When we go get boba tea, always Vietnamese people in there. My daughter loves boba. That's like her favorite thing to get after school. And so I love like just a regular gunpowder green tea. So good. Just plain green tea. Just don't let it sit too long because it gets really furiously funky. I love that. So I'll go and get tea, and she'll go get boba. Do not put boba in hot tea. I did that once. Sticky. Phlegm. So boba are these little tapioca starchy balls that they put at the bottom of your tea to give you something to do while you're chomping on your tea. And the texture is gagrific until you get used to it. Just soak gummy bears in water. Yeah, that's about right. A little harder than gummy bears though. Stale gummy bears in water. And I always get it with like 0 or minimal amount of sugar because it's so, like if you buy a milk bubble, which is they grind up frozen stuff, it's like 90% sugar. Get the Thai tea, milk bubble tea. It's like so sweet, your whole face will just slowly slide off. I can't drink it, but good. Anyway, so what else are your food? I'm going to write this word up here. If someone is getting fast food, that's pretty quick. Well, no, but okay, so what's interesting is that you associate fast food with lower SES. Why do you associate fast food with lower SES? It's cheap. We fed our entire family for less than $20 at Taco Bell. And all of us were satisfied. All of us weren't hungry. And if we go to a restaurant, if we go to Sushi Deli, we went to Sushi Deli last Friday, got it to go, but how much did it cost for all 4 of us? It was $71, and then with a tip. Well, I'm trying to think about how we differentiate group. So if you go to a fast food restaurant, can you classify those people? But of course, should you classify people in general? No, but what I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to see. So when you look at fast food people, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? If you look at a bunch of people sitting at a noodle shop, if it's in Convoy versus it's in North Park, what would you see a difference in? The ethnicities change because people tend to group themselves. What I'm trying to get at is that I'm trying to figure out is in your experience, how do you group people? How do you see people as different groups? Because in my culture, it's kind of interesting, especially my annoying, overly educated academic culture. How do I group students? How do I group you? Kind of silly. Major. I see people as whatever majors they are. So I always look for the psych majors first. Because because I'm a psych person, I like those people. Okay, and I'm gonna do whatever I can to try to. I'm itching now, thinking of Asia. But I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make sure I pick on those people a little bit extra. And yeah.
It's like they have a tendency, like, if you live further up north, it's like, they classify you as your better or you have a lot of money, like, all my kids in Mexico, they all think, like, we live here, we have the best life in the world, we have so much money, we have everything, and, like, in reality, we just...
You're scraping by like everybody else.
Yeah, like, everyone, all my cousins in Mexico, they're all, like, doctors and stuff, and I'm just like, you're still going to college, like, you guys are living a better life than me, but they just think that they live up here.
So they apply the situation to what? To what about you? Yeah, so just the geographic area of where you live, they're applying a whole bunch of prejudices to the way that you are. Now, do prejudice necessarily be negative? No. Okay, but they're still prejudices. Prejudice. Okay, so so if you're from here and you look south, what do you see? We're not, Texas is east of here. You turn your map sideways. We're just going, yeah. Wait, getting my bearings right? That's south, sorry. Yeah, so if you think south, if you think of Mexico as TJ, is Mexico TJ? No. It's a border town. It's a lot more influenced by San Diego than it is by Mexico. And so when you think of a class of people and you think of a group of people by a specific characteristic, oh, you're in the United States, everything must be great for you. Even though things are kind of rough, they're still better than where we are. But so if you start thinking that way, you start labeling people. As soon as you start labeling people, that's where we start stereotyping people. That's what I kind of wanted to look at. Where are some of these stereotypes that you see? The stereotypes aren't real, and this is what you're struggling with. I can see this in your face because you keep doing this. Stereotypes aren't real, but are they a part of the story? People that are eating at fast food restaurants. You're a big fast foodie. I'm not fast foodie, but you eat the Cheetos. I saw this. Okay, what's the point of eating Cheetos? They're yummy. They're very tasty. I'm just really, again, thinking of eating hot Cheetos. Okay? But what nutritional value do they have? They're carbs. They're fuel for a short period of time. And they're plenty of salt. Okay? But what's the point of eating them? They're yummy. Well, but that's the reason. Why did I eat a donut this morning? It was yummy. It is actually detrimental to me to eat a donut. Okay, I worked out hard this morning, so I rationalized it in my head, so it's okay. But is that really okay? No. But I was there in the car, rubbing it on myself. Okay. Crying the whole way to school. Okay. It was so good. But the idea is that if you're eating for hedonistic value, pleasure, versus eating for nutrition value, you've got something healthy looking over there. Veggies. Yeah, and then the other day you had Dallas had the protein platter thing. Yeah, I have my homemade one. So for lunch I have 2 hard-boiled eggs and a chicken wrap that I made with low-carb oat bread as the wrap, and lettuce and cheese and fat-free turkey. Why would I rather eat the Cheetos? They're yummy. My food's yummy, but but the difference is that if you see people eating foods that are yummy, why do you assume that they're eating them? They want yummy food. You see somebody eating something that's yucky and healthy, like a big bowl of broccoli, you go, ooh, you're eating healthy. Yeah. We're horrified that you're eating broccoli. What's interesting for kids is that kids have a different bitter receptor taste in their mouth, and bitter is way more bitter to kids than it is to adults. So there's a really cool shift somewhere around 9 to 10 where all of a sudden their taste receptors change. And the sweet foods change their meaning in the kid's brain, and bitter foods start becoming more palatable. And that's like we've introduced our kids to bitter foods very young. My son has been drinking black tea since, I don't know, probably like 2 years old. No, it's black. If you're worried about the amount of caffeine, the British government recommends having less than 14 cups of tea while you're pregnant. 14 cups of tea. He has one. But it's why drink tea? It's not black tea, like Lipton black tea, the kind that he likes. It's got maybe 30 milligrams of caffeine in it at most. I mean, unless you're sucking on the whole bag, you're not going to really get enough caffeine to notice. But is tea good for you? Yeah, it's not bad for you though. Is soda bad for you? Yeah. And so we would mix milk and tea, have milk tea, long before we discovered boba. Okay, and so every morning he has tea with lemon and honey in it before he goes to school. That's why he threw up the other day, because he had he chugged the tea with lemon and honey on an empty stomach. Don't do that. Anyway, so his bitter sense is pretty good. My daughter started really liking onions and garlic. When she started liking onions and garlic, that's when her bitter receptors really turned on. And now she has a problem because if you're a 15-year-old eating lots of garlic, we go hummus at our house, what do you have all the time? Dragon bread. Sriracha bread. That's garlic. Oh. Make sure everybody in the road trip's eating sriracha, because otherwise you're the one that's stinking up the car. Anyway, so if a kid has this conditioned response, they've tried broccoli, they see someone eating something healthy, like broccoli, they go, ew, healthy food's bad. See how that transitions very quickly? Junk food, sorry, I'm picking on you, but junk food is good. Why is processed junk food made the way it is? To make you want to eat it. It's engineered to be tasty. And what's interesting is, so when you see someone who's acting hedonistically versus someone who's acting healthy, does that change the way that you feel about the person? Possibly. It's like when I first found out that I was diabetic, people saying, "Oh, that sucks." Like, well, no, I just have to change what I eat. But why are they saying, "Oh, that sucks"? I do eat the good food. I eat lots of good food. But I changed my interpretation of what good versus bad is. I changed the way that I see. I love peanut butter sandwiches, so I have peanut butter, whole peanut butter, not processed peanut butter, on Ezekiel bread. Banana's too carby. I don't eat bananas. Bananas are just sugars on sticks. It's just not really useful. Okay, but the whole idea of trying to label somebody based on their, you look down at people who are eating fast food. Well, if you're cray healthy, you look at those people and go, what are they doing to their bodies? Yeah. I didn't see that. Uh-uh.
So the government shut down,
Right.
Trump they won the title for the president,
Oh, okay, I did see that. I didn't know what that was. Okay. The president speaks to his people. Who voted for the president in the highest number? Not conservatives. Well, conservatives voted for him, but that's not the highest percentage where he swung the vote. Low-income white people. And that was the primary, that's where did he do most of his campaigning? Rural white America. Tennessee. But he in Pennsylvania, Ohio, lots of places where white majorities were fading. We have the Center for Disease Control data that shows it's a high school survey that's got 1 million students in it over the course of the last, from 1991 all the way to now. We use it in my statistics class to look for relationships between things. It's totally fun. But what's happening to demographics in a lot of these places that were used to be all white working class? Well, they're becoming less white and more Hispanic. So why stomp up and down about a wall? Who's it affecting the most? Not just white people, the poor white people, the people who are working at hourly jobs, that someone comes in who's going to work harder and not join a union. Who's going to be affected by this? The poor, low-income white people. And then so affluent, I'm not affluent, I'm a poor person at heart, but we make enough money to live. But us upper middle class white people look at that and go, well, that's stupid. They're not taking our jobs. Because are they taking our job? No, and you see the rhetoric as being inflammatory and racist, but if you talk to the people who are working, the farm workers, and back in Vermont, who works on all the farms? Hispanic people who actually work really hard, who go to work every day because they have a lot of pride in their job. And a lot of Caucasian people work really hard and have pride in their job. A lot of black people have pride in their job. But if the population is shifting of the poor people, guess what happens? You're competing now. And if you're undocumented, you can work for less money. You'll say, I'll do it for 20 bucks a day. And the other person says, I can't afford to do it for 20 bucks a day. And they say, sorry. So the goal is that if you speak to your audience, why would you buy a bunch of McDonald's for a football team? It's not for the football team. He's talking to his audience. And this is really important. If you want to sway a group, you let the group, you let the group follow you. Okay, let me pause this for a second and I can show you a quick little video. The formation of the group are these negative, hateful stereotypes he has portrayed, sadly, against whom? He targeted two groups specifically. Yeah, not illegal, any sort of immigrant. He uses the word immigrant as a negative term. And the way he uses it as a negative term, anytime someone who's an immigrant, they say, oh. But why does he want to build a wall? but that doesn't work. But why does he want to build a wall? He said he was going to build a wall. And it's funny because like Israel and Palestine, they built a big wall through Palestine. They didn't do it to keep people out. What did they do it to do? To demoralize the people by building a wall through their country. No, but it doesn't go across the border. Yeah, how'd that work? They killed a lot of people building the wall. But what it was is that if you wanted to see that your emperor was strong, I forget how many generations of emperors built that stupid wall. I mean, 1,000 years, people I don't think they've been working on it lately, but I'm sure they will again soon, but it's going to be a virtual wall. But like what they do is if you imagine what being a rural farmer is like, where the only thing that you see is your farm and the trees around your house most of the time. And you walk out and you see this structure that is so big and so massive it goes from the end of sky to the end of the sky, how do you feel? In awe. Small. Just imagine, I'm going to pause this again. The pipe organ in Balboa Park, and hear that toccata and fugue in D minor through this entire thing. It's so overstimulating, you get this disassociated feeling. When you stand next to the Grand Canyon, what do you get? That disassociated feeling. Well, that's why the China built the wall, because their enemies will walk up and, oh crap, I'm not bugging those folks. Did it work? No. No. Because they just said, yeah, they said, okay, there's a wall. Big deal. We'll just walk around it. Or over, yeah. That's one of my friends who's Hispanic and has a T-shirt with a guy with his leg like this, and he goes, build a wall. I'll get over it. Okay, and walls are not, why is there fencing and walls in San Diego? Yeah, to make it harder for people to cross. People still cross it, but to make it people slow down. And so people like, well, we don't want a wall. Well, what is Trump envisioning? What we think he's envisioning? I don't know what Game of Thrones. I haven't ever watched it, but I know what it is. I haven't watched it. But he's picturing this giant Chinese wall across the border. Make America great again. But do those slogans have, because we live in San Diego, does that reality seem to fit? No. But if you live in Missouri, does that reality fit? A lot more. And so what's really crazy about this whole thing is that the rhetoric it's literally trying to do the same thing with those stereotypes. When you say, oh, people who eat fast food, they don't care about their health. Well, you see the Weinert family eating a fast food meal on a road trip. We don't look around everybody else there going, oh, you guys don't want to eat healthy. You're all sinners for eating this food. We don't raise the health food flag. But when we make our own personal choices at home, do we eat super healthy? Yes. Okay? And so the difference is in when you hear a stereotype or when you see a stereotype, it's a part of a single story. And you develop the rest of the story based on, where do you fill in the rest of the story from? A single example that you've seen. A single example that you've seen. I'm always irritated. I have one of my friends who's super, super fit, and he's always eating crap. But I'm like, how can you sit there and eat that? And he's super fit. He goes, I don't know. But do we see what he does in the rest of his day? No, he'll just sit and eat like a donut, or he'll sit and eat, he'll get a Frappuccino. That's the thing that bugs me the most. Well, of course they're good. Hedonistically, they're awesome. Benefit for your body? But I can get that. I have mint tea today. But last week I had way too much coffee. It's not good. Anyway, but if I go and get coffee, I'm not going to dump cream and sugar in it. I'm going to have coffee. I like coffee in my coffee. I don't like stuff in my coffee. That's an Einstein shirt. I put coffee in my coffee. Yeah. Okay. So when you're looking around the world, I want you to try to think about this in psychology, because from our perspective, how do you define who you are? A lot of who you are is the group that you're with. I'm going to write this up here now again. A lot of the things that set the boundary is your group. And so we were talking about this before, is your name important? Why is your name important? It's a part of your identity. Okay? And if your name gives you power, Voldemort. Sorry. I'm trying to remember what his name was before he was Voldemort. Riddle. Tom Riddle. So that was a piece of semantic information. Excellent nerd cred. Okay, but the semantic information is that if you read all of the books, you remember that Tom Riddle, because he pops his way into 3 of the old books, maybe 4 if you look carefully at the first one, but that's not important. If you have a name that has power to it, like Anakin becomes Darth Vader. Once he loses Anakin, he loses himself and becomes a dark prince. Okay? And so, why does your name give you power? It's not just the association, though. It defines yourself. So it's really funny. When I first got hired here, my name is spelled Stephen with a PH. When I first was hired here, they said, because I knew the people that were setting up the account, most people call me Steve. Steve, gummy bears, mustache. Okay. But most people call me Steve, but my formal name is Stephen. So when they set up all my accounts, because I knew the people, what did they set it up as? Steve Weinert. That's if you're my TA Sam, that's what you call me. Steve. The monkey, yeah, with the monkey thought translator. What I'm trying to say, son, is that I'm proud of you. That's, okay. I love it. Okay. It's not that old, that's the best part. It's just, I can start making some old Star Trek references, but it's Thursday and you have a royal Fizbin. Yeah. No, offend away. Okay, so you can develop a conditioned response. You can generalize a conditioned response to a group of individuals. And the problem is that if you label groups of people as fill in the blank. Okay, so you don't like Caucasian people. Okay, and let's just stick with that. As soon as you see someone who is Caucasian, you feel uneasy. Right? I mean, and so what happens is that you define the group by the uneasiness you're feeling toward that particular person's characteristics. Or if you don't trust somebody because of their ethnicity or because of their race, or you have a conditioned post-traumatic stress response to a particular ethnicity or race or whatever. By becoming conscious the fact that you feel uncomfortable around people like that, your consciousness can say, oh, that's because of the trauma that I had. But if you don't, you say, well, I just don't like that person because they're that way. Well, it gives you a prejudice, and it does give you bias, but doesn't mean you discriminate. No, because that's your choice of behavior. Right, but we're all prejudiced and we're all biased. We all, until you reach that enlightened point where you look at the world and see everybody as a series of infinite little dots that create themselves, then we're all perfect and we see the world the way it is. But that's not the way, we don't work that way. Why do we average everything? It's less energy, and it's impossible to, if you watch the video, the Rain Man video, Google Kim Peek, I'll write that up there. He remembers all the details about everything. He can't function because he remembers all the details about everything. And he's completely debilitated because his brain is completely overwhelmed by details of everything. We average things. We even average our own memories. We consolidate our memories. We use Someone who is older uses less mental energy to have the same thought as someone who's younger. For me to throw a discus uses less muscle power to throw a discus just as far as a younger person throwing a discus the same distance, because I can do it more efficiently and I use less energy. That's why old people slowly get squishy, is because we get more efficient. Yeah. That's actually you use 100% of everything you have. Right, so most of our world is unconscious, and that's why people feel a certain way, because most of our world is unconscious. You don't pay attention to all the things that you're doing all the time. You pay attention to whatever draws your attention. And so, yes, everybody has prejudices. Everybody has biases. And a lot of these prejudices and biases, even though you're trying not to discriminate, it'd be like, I was going to pick on Asia for this, but I'll pick on you because you have to represent. I could throw you under the bus, but I won't. I already picked on you enough today. So if she does really well on her test, I go, wow, you did really well on your test. Is that prejudice? Yeah, and it's like, and it's so awful. And this college teachers do this. Like, you see someone of color do well. You guys do well, I go, don't even mention it. Asians are good students. Okay? And so, but if an African American does well, you go, wow, you did really well. Or an African or Somalian, because Africa's a continent, not a country. But why do people do that to you? They assume you're not going to do well. We assume that you're going to do well. But so are you purposely being discriminatory? Are you purposely being biased? It's not purposeful. You're not meaning to be mean. But when you are generally surprised when something happens, you're like, oh, I'm really surprised. That's the bias sneaking in. We can't get rid of it. But what's interesting is by becoming conscious of it. I took a educating men of color class. Turns out that Hispanic males, I didn't want to throw under the bus. It's really hard to tell some point. You can tell being Hispanic, similar tones in the skin until you hear you talk. Can't tell. Okay. He's got a fake in his shirt, so I think I'm talking to him now. But, okay, check it. So it turns out that the Hispanic males will not ask for help compared to Caucasian males. African American males, if they can't be successful, will quit. Why? Culture. Part of it's culture. In my Western European culture, we ask for help constantly. And how are we seen in other cultures? Needy and weak. And what's funny is that the different cultural perspectives, I didn't really think about this until I took this class. And these guys have a really good racket going at San Diego State because they're running this class and they charge a ton of money for it, and a bunch of faculty take the class. And because they have a bunch of faculty taking the class, they have a bunch of really good students, so they just kick back with their feet up. They've got it nailed. But what they do is they talk about all the research about what makes, especially Hispanic Latino men, are low probability of finishing. Because if they need help, they won't ask for it. In general, this is based on the research, based on probabilities. And if someone, a Caucasian always asks for help, no matter what, yeah. Well, it turns out that if you have a female teacher, it lowers the probability of Hispanic Latino males asking for help. If you have a male teacher, there's a higher probability of them asking for help. If you have African American teacher, this is all data from the class. So they looked at multiple classes about different universities. African American teacher, there's a lower success rate amongst African American males in the class. But the teacher is generally harder on kids of the same culture. They had to struggle to get where they are, and so they make their students struggle to get where they are. Okay, my daughter was reading my Rate My Professors last night. Oh, I hate it when she does that. Laughing at me the whole time. You're too easy. Why am I easy? What class is this? Intro to Psychology. I'm not easy in my upper psych courses. I'm very pleasant and easy and nice to you people because no. No, I want you to use psychology in your major. Whatever major you're in, I don't care what it is. If you're a nursing major, taking psych is huge. Because then you realize that the best way to understand yourself. Anybody know? No, don't. You got to separate yourself from your group to understand yourself. How do you define yourself? It's written right there. Boundaries. You learn your boundaries. How do you know where your boundaries are? How do you know where your self ends, man? I could put some hippie music on. Yeah, it's easy. Listen to other people. The more you focus on yourself, the less you understand other people. Once you stop listening to yourself and listen to other people, you understand yourself better. Ooh. Which is hard, because what are we all absorbed in? Yes, ourselves. Well, as you get older, what you start to realize is that yourself is less important than the people around you. Because the people around you, do they influence you? Yeah, so if you understand the people around you, what happens to their influence on you? It goes down. If you understand the individuals around you, the peer responses are different. If you look at your friends that are the woohoo party folks, look at what their life is like outside of the woohoo party world. Maybe you start to understand why they're the woohoo party people that they are. Their biggest partying friends, Nick and Amy, he is in charge of packaging loans. He was what caused the stock market to crash, 2008. That was my buddy Nick. It was his fault. Because they were selling B-side loans, packaging them, selling them to corporations, overvaluing houses and undervaluing the thing, and he made so much money. They have 2 houses in Bay Park, overlooking Mission Bay. One of them they rent and to a friend of theirs for just enough to cover the taxes and the mortgage, and they pretty much just live there. He just lets them live there. But why does he have 2 houses? Because the house market crashed and he had tons of money because he sold a bunch of houses and the values went down. This house would be worth a fortune for when his kids need to go to college. Because he's super good financial. Why does he party so hard? Stress. He is so stressed out all the time at work. As soon as he starts drinking on Fridays, he says, okay, it's go time. And he just goes for it. Just with a big old drinking glass full of bourbon, just sipping on it all night. Like, oh, is that going to hurt places later? But he doesn't drink all week, so he just hammers on the weekend. How's the sustainability of that? Oh, the sustainability is not good. He's just turned 40. And so by the time he gets to be in his 50s, he's probably going to suffer some health problems because of this kind of behavior. Just speaking of someone who's approaching 50s, health problems just follow you. Anyway, but how do you set your name? How do you figure out who you are? Who gives you your name? Not necessarily. So you got a name that a lot of people couldn't pronounce, so they called you. Why not? Say your birth certificate name. It sounds fine when you say it, but if I try to make those syllables, what happens? It doesn't come out quite right. You're smirking, you're smiling. Okay, so we call her Myrna, right? But how did you get Myrna out of that? She just labeled you as... So the dad named you and the mom called you. Perfect. So the mom still, she has her daughter named Myrna. But why did the dad get his way? So do you want to be Myrna or Anan? So you're defining yourself based on the pressures coming in from the outside. And so it's fun. I mean, this is something as simple as your name. Well, because you have a conflict. And that the conflict, that's why I'm bringing this up, is that do we get boundary conflicts with yourself? Yeah, even something, and that's why you brought this up, that's why I thought it was wonderful, that you have this conflict within yourself. This conflict is, it's the same thing what you said. If you have a negative bias or feeling toward a particular ethnicity, that's a conflict within yourself. Because you know rationally, I shouldn't feel this way, but how do you automatically feel? You feel it. And that feeling comes forward. Remember, attitudes come from emotions. And it's really hard to not produce that attitude. It's hard not to get that feeling. Because it's already happening as you are perceiving things. And that internal conflict, and that's what we're going to talk about next class and then on next week, is we're going to start talking about where that conflict causes problems in your day-to-day life. That's what disorders are. And how do we know that a conflict becomes a disorder? Well, just because you keep thinking about it, thinking about bicycles all the time, it's not a disorder. Okay, yeah, so the key thing is, I'm going to write it here, and I'll erase that other. Social and occupational functioning. Okay. My sister went to Cornell, and this is back in the 90s, they had whiteboards that had TV projection screens behind them. Yeah. They were glass whiteboards and a computer projection behind it. So he could project right on the whiteboard, the teachers, and then to write on the whiteboard with a marker, and then, you guys have seen the smart boards, right? Yeah, so picture that, but this is the 90s version. So I really tried to get one of those here, and it's 2018? Now I finally have something similar that I can use. Almost. Not quite there yet. Anyway, but the way you have a disorder is it affects your social and occupational functioning. So when is your depression just being Eeyore versus being depressed? You can't, social functioning, you don't hang out with your friends, you lose joy in social situations. You can't go to work and your work job functions. In other words, your day-to-day behavior is deficient because of whatever disorder. So you can have anxiety, but is anxiety a disorder? If it affects your social and occupational functioning, anxiety can become a disorder. There's a lot of other symptoms. We have a book, the DSM-5, which has all the symptoms in it. Please never buy one of those books because you have most of the symptoms. Okay, but it's where yourself and not self, when this boundary starts becoming frayed. You can't figure out where yourself is. And that's why it was fun when I was teaching this in the high school. We had the kids try to make a portrait of what their self is, what their ideal self is. High school kids have a really hard time figuring out what their ideal self is. Because they don't know themselves enough, because their self isn't done changing yet. What age does your boundaries generally solidify? Yeah, around 26 years old. Okay, when you're 17 to 26 is when your prefrontal cortex finishes growing. That's when your personality finishes. Traumatic brain injury, can that reorganize self? Yeah. One of my students' little brother thought it'd be cool to grab hold of a car on a skateboard. He's seen it on TV once, seemed like a good idea. Okay, what happens when you grab a car on a skateboard? Well, the initial grab is the hard part. Because when you initially grab, your mass becomes the same as that as the car, and if you're leaning back thinking that the board's going to go, the board goes forward because when you jump on, the mass changes. And so he went back and hit his head, and major brain damage in the back of his head. Because of course, when you're a young punk kid riding a skateboard, you wear a helmet. No, nothing bad can happen to me. Anyway, so her brother completely rearranged his personality when he was 12 years old. He was standardly stupid before, but afterwards, I mean, grabbing hold of bumpers of cars on your skateboard, normal 12-year-old stupidity. But then he had a really hard time at school. He had a really hard time concentrating. He ended up dropping out of school. He ended up hanging out with some wrong kids. He had a really bumpy, long period of time until he finally got to high school and someone diagnosed him with TBI, and they started doing therapy for him. How come he didn't get diagnosed with therapy and stuff before? Because he had a bad concussion and nobody sent him for further treatments, and because he happened to be African American and he was screwing up at school, did anybody connect the fact that the injury could have had something to do with it? No, they just lumped him in with one of those other kids that's causing problems at school. And it's interesting because of the ethnicity of the kid, the services that kid received were significantly different than if someone like my son were to do the same thing. But it's really crazy because your brain, your baby little brain doesn't stop growing until 26. So problems that you're having now at 18, 19 years old, you might outgrow. But what also might you do? You might get better at them. Like if you suffer from anxiety now, what happens as you get older? You get better at being anxious. My wife was always anxious. She's really good at being anxious now. That's why she's a good principal, because she cares. She pays attention to everything. She looks for problems before that they happen. She'll go out in the playground and immediately know when somebody's about to do something stupid and just walk over and stand near them. And they're like, how does she know? Well, it's because your behavior changes, and she knows the behaviors that change. She knows the kids that are going to cause problems. Are the kids bad kids that cause problems? No, they have something called impulse control. Dude, I'm going to throw this rock. I bet I can throw it further than you. Oh, yeah, I bet I can throw it further than you. Okay, cool. Which way did they throw it? Toward the parking lot or toward the street, and they're about to throw the rock, and they realize, are they thinking about where the rock's going to land? No, they're thinking about who can throw it further. And she looks over them looking down at the rocks and talking to each other. She walks over there. Yep, too. And it's funny because do the playground aides see that? Not every time. And so the playground aides, not to point out a playground aide, but the playground aide, who's on his phone. Oh, hi. But you guys don't see the same thing the principal sees. Why? Right, the kids don't respect what your authority is, and so they will look at you and go, I'm going to throw this rock, and you're going to go, no, you're not, and it's okay. And they throw the rock, and you say, go to the principal's office. They're like, she told on us. And so it's a really hard gig. And the best way to deal as a playground aide is you know the kids, and the kids do things to respect you, not to fear you. And if the kids respect you, are they going to do what you tell them to do? Yes, but you have to follow the leadership principle. You find a kid who follows you and give them lots of reinforcement. Not candy, that's creepy. Anyway, so okay, so that's all I really wanted to go through today. Next class, we have to put a bunch of vocabulary up for you, because you have all the concepts down, but what do we need now? Semantics. You have to practice the semantics. What's the difference between aversive racism and active racism? Our country is very actively becoming more racist right now. And aversive racism is much different. When you watch the videos over the weekend, you'll start to see some of the differences between active versus aversive racism. Okay.